this isn't mine, this is my friend's model, and it's got some sort of issue with the motor. For a start, it's very wobbly, so that motor mount I think needs strengthening up. Also, it does scrape on the body, so it needs pulling out more, just a little. And he says there's some sort of electrical issue, so there may be a loose wire on the motor. That's what he thinks, and I reckon he's correct. So he's given me the model. He would like me to do some open heart surgery on it. Now these models do not have inspection hatches like some of the others do. The Spitfire, Messerschmitt, Warhawk, and I reckon the Zero will all have inspection hatches, but the Corsair, Mustang and Trojan do not, and all do the Sport Cub 500s. Now I had a Sport Cub 500 that I opened up and had a look inside and managed to fix that, clean the motor, had grid in the motor, clean that out, that was fine. So he's asked me to do something with this one, so I'm going to have to slit those joins very carefully and try and get to that motor and then glue it together again. Minium. First of all, just gently remove the prop and a slit down here along the join, if I can, using a brand new scalpel. It's never going to look quite as neat as it originally was. It's very well stuck, I have to say. Makes it difficult. Okay, you can get into it now. This part is completely loose. So need gluing in again. Only thing is, the wires seem intact. I'm going to pull it out. Those wires seem intact on the motor. It's disappointing, so I can see an obvious fault. Yeah, I can get that motor out to here. There it is with its guts spilled out. This is a lipometer. Get them on eBay for just a few pounds. It measures the voltage of the cell, 4.1 volts, 4.12 to be precise. That's an all of 4.1 and cell 1 is 4.12. That's how that reads. It can read up to 8 cells. This is of course a one cell 400 milliamp hour battery, so you're going to plug it in. First of all, transmitter on. And I can hear the stability going, so that's good. Do that with the transmitter to bind it, and then it should hopefully go. And it isn't. But we do have controls on everything else, so this is the fault he was reporting. What I'm trying to do is see how easy it is to get to the circuit board. That is where the joint is at the front of the main wing. The rest of the wing wasn't glued, but it is glued at the back, so It's just the front and the rear I've got to loosen up, then I can get this wing off. And this is painstaking work really, because it's taking ages. Oh. Because you've got to go careful. And that, I'm afraid the bit has broken off. It will glue back on invisibly, but that isn't how I wanted it to come off. Unfortunately, that's a danger of trying to get into these models. Ah, here we are. We've made it into the major organs. So I can now see the servos for the elevator, the rudder, and there's the circuit board. The servo for the ailerons is still intact. The good thing about EPO foam is if it breaks along a join, as this one has, when you stick it together, that join becomes invisible. So although that was a major rip, it's now glued on with Yoo-Hoo glue perfectly. So all the components have actually come off okay. I took that off of the motherboard. The yellow lead goes to the rear. What I can see is that the wires to the motor look okay at that end. And then going to the motherboard, they end up here and here. I don't know if these connections are loose, but they don't seem it. They seem on quite nicely. So what I need to do is see if this motor is alive. Here's the motherboard. It is glued in this one, in the Messerschmitt. It was screwed in with 4 screws. See, this is dangerous doing this because I've got one more corner to lift. This corner. Try not to tear the foam. It's been glued in, so I'm sliding the knife down there to break as much of that glue as I can. That's it. Right, now what I could do is undo those 2 screws, take the servo arms off. Now I can definitely see that these wires are intact. They're fine to there. As far as I can tell, that looks fine. I can't tell if it's the motherboard or the motor that's at fault, and the thing would be to swap components, put another motor on, see if it functions, and if it doesn't, then it's a slightly bigger job of swapping over the motherboard. So that's where we're at. I haven't got any spare components to try it. That motherboard was glued in, so I'm just going to push it in for the moment. I'm going to put the aileron servo back into the motherboard in a moment, yellow lead towards the back of the plane. Perhaps another neater way to get the motor in position and stop it from sliding rearwards is to put some foam in there. So I'm going to make up a piece of foam that I can just slot in and see if that holds it first rather than a cocktail stick. This is the motor. I've unsoldered it from the circuit board and I'm now connecting up to a 9-volt supply, which is fine. And what I've noticed is sometimes it goes and sometimes it doesn't. And I'm pretty sure now there's a fault with the motor. There we are, it's going now. and then it isn't. Now these wires are not broken, they're fine, I'm pretty sure about that. You just move this motor a bit and it may go again, or it may not. There we are. So I think there's something wrong with the motor inside. I'm installing everything. I've put the yellow lead towards the rear of the plane. I've soldered on these leads again, the red positive, blue negative. That's correct. I've got my little piece of packing foam there in case it's ever needed or used. I think it is just the motor now. It just needs soldering on to that motherboard. That seems to be where the intermittent fault is. And you've got to get this right out of the way of the servo mechanism. That's there. That is good. And then this battery door would just be glued in place there eventually. And once everything was glued up together, that would be it. So I'm just going to give it a quick run up and see where we are. Transmitter on first, so you have control. Then power to the battery and therefore the receiver, and of course we've got flight stability, so that's good. I've just bound the transmitter and given it some throttle and nothing there. No, it's not interested. But we have left aileron, right aileron, yeah. Dive, climb, and right and left rudder. So everything else is functioning, just that motor. Oh, hang on. So here we go. We've bound, given it some throttle. That has got hardly any thrust in it at all. That motor is very, very sick. Yeah, that's the problem. It's trying to go. I think something's come out inside the motor. You know, maybe it's magnets are lost position, something like that. That is full throttle and it's got hardly any power. It needs a new motor, and that is it. Okay, at least we've found out a lot about the Trojan. I've got the motor out of the gearbox. It's literally a push fit. So what I did, I pulled it off whilst I held the motor with some pliers. So you can buy the motors for about £12 including postage, and then you would just slide it in and line up the gearbox. There. I'm getting quite fond of this little Trojan. It's nice to open it up, see inside and understand more how they function. When the plane is faulty, you've got nothing to lose, have you? And I think there's something wrong with that motor. Maybe magnets are dislodged inside, something like that. It's very underpowered, but it does still function. And I've noticed that. I'm not an electric motor expert, but I've noticed that with other electric motors. When I had my robots, that if the magnets fell out, that motor didn't make anywhere near as much power. So I suspect it just needs that motor component. And of course it does need that wobbliness sorting out. So So the bit of foam needs to be properly glued inside, and then I think that might get airborne again. Yeah, I'm beginning to like the little Trojan. It's growing on me. Give that back to my mate, and he can decide what he wants to do. Use it for parts or get a motor.